Welcome to episode 5 of Behind the Bills. I'm Iván Carrillo. Coming up, the 2-year legislative session is officially over. What did the governor sign? What did he veto? We'll have that and much more. Plus, California State Assembly hopeful Robert Garcia joins the show. Find out why he credits his time with ACSA for his success and what his plans are when he gets to Sacramento. Let's jump right in. Governor Gavin Newsom has been very busy this past month. Hundreds of bills made it to his desk, and he had through Monday, September 30th to act on them. I have a lot of good news to report. I'm going to start with AB 2088. This bill sought to create a first right of refusal for existing classified staff. In other words, it would have forced districts to prioritize length of service over suitability and qualifications. We were heavily opposed to this measure because it would have delayed hiring and it would have compromised the quality of candidates that are ultimately serving our students. ACSA led a coalition. We partnered with other local agencies who also would have been impacted. We mobilized school districts up and down the state. Kudos to many of you for answering the call and uplifting your voices in this process as well. All of this work was instrumental for getting the governor to veto this bill. He cited our concerns in his veto message, where he said that this would have impacts on students and not be in their best interest. Youth mental health is a top priority for ACSA. It's front and center in our One Voice for Students legislative platform, and the impacts of social media on youth mental health have been well documented. Governor Newsom signed 2 bills that are going to help in this arena. He signed our co-sponsored piece of legislation that is going to prohibit social media companies from using addictive algorithms. He signed another piece of legislation that we supported that is going to put more responsibility and accountability on social media companies to act on harmful content. We've heard over and over from you about harmful posts that are reported to social media companies and that they fail to do anything with that information. And these posts continue to have negative impacts on the health and well-being of your students. The governor signed SB 1504, which we supported, which is going to put greater responsibility and accountability on social media companies to act in an expedited fashion when these posts are reported to them. And if they don't, they will be held accountable. Governor Newsom also signed a bill that will provide youth with access to life-saving medication. We are all concerned about the fentanyl crisis, particularly because there's been a dramatic rise of fentanyl-related deaths amongst teens. AB 2998 allows kids to carry Narcan on school campuses. We pushed hard for this measure over an alternative that had some legs. There was a competing piece of legislation that would have required all schools to carry fentanyl test strips on school campuses. Not only would this have been costly, but think about the message that this sends kids. When we're providing test strips, we're essentially telling them we're okay with you using drugs so long as it's clean of fentanyl. This is why we supported AB 2998 and felt like this was a much better approach. Equipping kids with life-saving Narcan, knowing that they are often in the best position to act immediately if there's an overdose. We also fought to ensure that the bill includes clear language to remove risk of liability for school districts and school staff. The fact that Governor Newsom signed this bill is a big win, because what this boils down to is if this can save one life, then all of our efforts would have been worth it. For years, ACSA has been talking about districts being inundated with reporting requirements. These reports are redundant, they're costly, and they require a lot of staff time in order to complete. Some of our members have coined the term plandemic to describe how ludicrous all these reporting requirements are. SB 1315 will, I almost can't even get through this sentence without laughing out loud because the irony would just wash over you. It's going to require the Department of Education to develop a report on the number of reports that school districts have to submit. we've had to bite our tongue during the bill proceedings because there's a part of us that wants to say things like, let's change the reporting requirements a month before the report's due, and similar things that we know school leaders have had to react to over the years. While we can poke fun at this bill for days, and trust me, we're gonna do that, we hope that it leads to some meaningful change. We are committed to ensuring that this report is done in a meaningful fashion and that ultimately the findings are used to streamline reporting requirements. $10 billion can go a long way to support California schools. And that's why ACSA is all in on the school facility bond that will be on the November ballot. As you've heard me talk about, Proposition 2 provides critical funding for vital projects to repair, upgrade, modernize, and construct schools. We've already contributed $100,000 to the campaign using our political action committee funds. We have been meeting and with editorial boards up and down the state to convince them to endorse the initiative. We are supporting school communities with the adoption of district resolutions in support of Prop 2. We are providing information and resources and toolkits to our members. A couple things that we've been pointing out is that this doesn't raise taxes. Secondly, this doesn't compete with a local bond that your district may have on the ballot. In fact, it does the opposite because there are matching funds available that allow you to leverage your local dollars in a more meaningful way. And you can rest assured that we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that Proposition 2 is passed in November. Now let's get to our conversation with Robert Garcia. Well, now joining me is Robert Garcia, one of ACSA's endorsed candidates for the state legislature, running for Assembly District 50. That is a portion of the Inland Empire. Robert, thank you for being here. Looking forward to this conversation. Welcome.
Thank you, Iván. Thank you, everyone from ACSA for having me on this podcast. I think as I shared, first podcast experience. So yeah, looking forward. It's going to be fun.
It's still early stages for me in terms of the podcast experience. So we're in this together, so to speak. I can't emphasize enough just the excitement that our association has for your candidacy, your experience in terms of walking in the shoes of our members. You are one of us, right? And so you can identify with the job experience of our members as an assistant principal and as a longtime educator. So we're eager to get you over the hump and do everything we can. But can you share a little bit? Well, maybe we'll start with just your own personal background, because I think that's a really interesting too, in terms of just your parents, their experience and how that shaped you, and then ultimately led you into the career path that you're in.
Yeah. So my parents, I'm first generation. My parents are both from Mexico, from the state of Jalisco. And so both of them came at a very young age to the United States. Both immigrants, both didn't know the language. My mom actually got up to 11th grade. And so in 11th grade, she did become pregnant with me. And so my mom and dad, got together. And so she had to, obviously, at that time, we didn't have the supports for students, that are with child. And so she did have to quit school, and she didn't get her high school diploma. And so, between that and my dad, only going up to third grade. So third grade is kind of when he had to start kind of doing jobs for the family. So education, educational attainment wasn't something that they were able to do. And so my dad has always, made it a priority for me and my brother growing up. Our job was really school. And so being able to do well in school, that's a responsibility I took, because I know how hard my parents were working. And so my job was to do well in school. And so I was the first in my family to graduate high school, was the first to graduate college, and then also the first to get a master's degree. So education has always been a priority. That's what my dad used to say. He used to say, no quiero que seas burro como yo. And so, basically didn't want me to, be a work mule like he was. And so, and education, I always stressed, was the way to make that happen. And so that's something that, as an educator, I stress, education is the great equalizer. It opens up so many opportunities for people. And so it shaped my life, because not only, I was fortunate enough to get an education that my parents weren't, but I was able to basically pay it forward in education as a teacher. Started off as a math science teacher for like the first part of my career. And then I've been an assistant principal and administrator for the last 9. So 13 years in the classroom, the last 9. And my focus really has been, with my background, making sure that kids get the education they deserve. So I had a lot of success with that as a teacher, as a school administrator, and that actually as a board member as well. So 8 years ago, I ran for school board, my children's school district, and I proudly represent the Etiwanda School District, encompassing the communities of Rancho Cucamonga and Fontana here in the IE. And proud to say that, we are the highest performing district in the area. And so education is a high priority for me, and not just education, but excellence in education. So that's kind of like what drives me, and it's been driving me for 22 years. And that's why I kind of see this as kind of the next step, running for assembly. It's not that leaving education, but I'd be able to fight for education and for students, but at the state level and the legislature and the Capitol.
No, it's clear that everything that you're describing in terms of those lived experiences, just growing up under the guidance of your parents and just your own educational experience, it is really made education a top priority for you, in really supporting public school educators and really protecting public education. I mean, you're running on this public education platform, and then you're putting that front and center in a way that we don't really see a whole lot up and down the state. Can you talk about that a little bit more, just in terms of the priorities that you'll have here in the state assembly, and how public education is a core of that?
Yeah, so education, it doesn't encompass a large part of our budget. And when there is economic downturn, people look to education where cuts can be made. And I really think that's kind of short-minded in terms of thinking, because long-term, it's going to have effects. So whenever there's a disinvestment in education, you're going to see that down the road 15, 20 years later, the effects of that disinvestment. And so my priority really is education, and make sure we keep those funding dollars flowing down to our school districts. And so one of the things that I talked about previously is the success we've had in schools. And I want to say it has been because we've had this influx of monies that to basically, address the whole child. So it hasn't just been academics. I'm fortunate enough to work at Ontario Montclair School District, one of 33 schools here in the district, where, we not only focus on reading, writing, and arithmetic, but we also focus on SEL support, counseling services for students, and even like extracurricular activities and getting students the supports. And so we have, really great special education programs as well. So we really focus on what the child needs. And I think that approach really should be replicated, focusing on the entire child and what their child's needs are. And so, coming from this area where it is lower socioeconomic status, having those additional monies and being able to have staff and personnel to address what is needed for the children to be successful is what's allowed us to have success academically.
Are there opportunities in the public policy space or in this with the state budget that you see? I mean, we certainly, as an association, have really advocated for much of what you're describing in terms of just these whole child supports, and recognizing how critical those investments are for their success, and not only academically, but just in life. What are you thinking about in terms of potential opportunities or to further advance the supports of public education students?
Well, I know we're coming towards the end of ESSER funding, so a lot of the post-COVID support that school districts received. Related to that, we do see kind of cuts to personnel and to programs. And so, I'm going to be the new to the legislator, knock on wood, that in November we get the results. but yeah, my part of my job is really going to be looking for additional sources of funding, additional sources of revenue to be able to keep it at the levels that sustain them at the levels that we know allow schools to be successful. And so that can mean many different things. I know that previously there was proposition to look at one part of Prop 13 on the commercial side, being able to make reforms there to get some additional monies. And I'm on record on favor. I'm doing that. And I think we can even do it for the residential side. We really have starved education for the last, the 30, 40 years here in California. And so having additional revenue is going to get us the investment in the future to get every aspect of our society going in California, the economy, education, the job force development. It requires the investment of monies. When we have budget downturns, we really have to focus on what our priorities are, and keeping education intact would be a priority.
Yeah, for sure. And certainly investing in a really robust manner is critical to the success of our schools. And one thing that we continually uplift, and I know we there's alignment between you and ACSA on this, is not only that we are investing in a really robust manner, but it's how those funds are being invested. I know, share this really strong belief in the local control funding formula, and we share this core value of just empowering local school communities to be able to make spending decisions that meet the needs of their particular school community. Can any other just experiences, I guess, or just I guess how you're seeing things and how you will see things in Sacramento?
It's not one size fits all. Every school district is different. And so being able to target monies in different programs that basically reflect, what the community needs are is essential. And so, for example, the Prop 28 Art in Schools, it's a great program to have, to be able to dedicate some monies to art. But it coming down as a proposition and it trying to, come down in that manner, I do think it makes it difficult to be able to shift things around in order to include a program like that, as opposed to it becoming organic. And school districts themselves being able to say, we'd like to implement an art program. This is what we'd like to do. With this, how much money we're going to dedicate to it. So having it being imposed like a certain percentage, it kind of puts restrictions as to what you're able to do with that program, as well as with other programs that are affected by it.
You are endorsed not only by ACSA, but you have the endorsement of the California Teachers Association, the California Federation of Teachers, also by the California School Employees Association. I think all of that really demonstrates just the amount of confidence that educators have in you and being the candidate that is really going to prioritize our public schools. You also have, notably, because there's two Democrats in this race, and you have the endorsement of the Democratic Party. You have the endorsements of the Speaker Rivas, which isn't really common for the speaker to engage in Dem on Dem races. So I share that because I want our listeners to know of just, the amount of confidence that you have from a wide range of folks, all of which really uplift this experience as an educator and doing work to support young people and educators.
This journey, I think, started February 14 of last year. So it's been a long journey. And so, one of my strengths, I think, because we did like a Gallup survey a few years ago, what my top strength was that learner. I think educators really have that as their top strength. And I've been learning a lot, this past year and a half regarding all the different, stakeholders and all different programs, initiatives, that go into state government. And so it's been learning a lot. But my expertise really has been education. So I view it as kind of a lens of kind of like all the different experiences that I've had. And they all kind of like built up and kind of led to this. And so I do think I can apply a lot of the lessons that I've learned in education in the last 22 years to a lot of the different problems that are affecting our state. And so, I am very fortunate and thankful for those experiences. And so And it varies. I've been everywhere from like an early academic outreach counselor at UCLA to working now at an elementary school with a preschool. I've taught high school biology, and so middle school math. And so it's a wide gamut of experience that I have. And so I've also had charter school experience as well as traditional school experience. So I do think all these different experiences have kind of shaped, my perspective of how what makes success and what doesn't make success. And so I think, it's going to serve me well in the legislature.
Here in the legislature, we often see, just historically speaking, what we deem as the educators, so to speak, or the education, members of the legislature as ones who come with experience at the local school board level. But it's very rare, and I touched on this at the front end, but for people to have experience running schools, and that must have been, I mean, you've ran for local office multiple times, and as you mentioned, and serving on the school board. But what would you say to other ACSA members who want to make a difference in their community?
No, definitely. I want to say, that commitment to community involvement, even as a young teacher, when I taught at LeConte Middle School, my first school site in Hollywood, LAUSD, it was important for me to understand my students. I wasn't a father at the time, and I think even that experience, being a parent, does this kind of shape your views on education and children and their learning. But I remember at the time, I didn't have kids, but I wanted to know the community, and so I actually ran for. They have neighborhood councils, and so I ran for the Hollywood Studio District Neighborhood Council, and I got involved in that solely because I wanted to know the issues that were affecting my students, and so I think it was very helpful, and so kind of knowing the issues that they had with gangs, and as well as having with buildings that were left dilapidated and they were hazards for students, and I saw that when, because I commuted into my last year, I commuted into the school, taking the red line and then 20-minute walk. And so I would see the needles, on the sidewalk and the graffiti. And so, I mean, this all the problems that plague the area, I was able to see firsthand and see the environment in which my students lived in. And I think it was a helpful perspective. And so my advice to teachers, or educators or ACSA members, to everybody, is just really to see it from a different perspective other than your own. And I think, that leads to understanding among others, and it really leads to empathy, and it really leads to, coming together for a common goal. And in our case, that's been, the success of our school. And so that's what we've been working towards. And so, but being able to see things from other people's perspective, but really putting yourself out there to see what that perspective is, I think is helpful.
We're a month and a half or so away from election day. I'm just curious, what is the day-to-day like for you?
So as you know, right now I'm on my I am doing a podcast with ACSA with Iván Carrillo. Yes, and so my report time is 7:30. We do a arrival, I greet students. I do the crosswalk duty, making sure that everybody's safe here because we have a lot of students being dropped off in the morning. And so it's visiting classrooms, it's dealing with situations that occur on a daily basis, it's having meetings with parents. All that's happening, and at the same time, 4:30 hits, and that's when campaign starts. And so that's when yesterday I was out here. My actual community here, my school, is actually part of the district, and so I was out talking to people here in the area, neighbors, and knocking on doors and leaving literature. And so that's I don't know how much more grassroots you get than that, but that's really kind of how you win elections. I've been doing it since 2014. That the field component is very important to actually connecting with folks, getting out there and seeing what their concerns are.
Well, Robert, I appreciate this conversation. I fully recognize too just your own personal story is one that is can identify with many students throughout California in terms of the types of challenges and experiences. It certainly is your why and inspiring all your life's work, and we're just proud to be one of your supporters, and are committed to doing everything we can to to get you over the finish line. And I just had enjoyed learning more about your story, and about what you're interested in doing here, once you get into the state assembly. But thank you. And I know every minute is critical at this stage of the game, so I appreciate you taking time out and your lunch break here to have a conversation.
Well, thank you, Ivan, and thank you to ACSA. They've been great supporters. And I do want to make a plug, for people listening. If they don't have ACSA membership, it is one of the best things that you can do for your career. In the workshops, and the workshops that are provided are top tier, and I can't stress that enough. So, so definitely, administrators or aspiring administrators, ACSA is the way to go. So thank you, Ivan. I really appreciate your time.
That's it for this episode of Behind the Bills. Thanks as always to everyone who works behind the scenes on this show. If you like what you heard, be sure to like, review, and most importantly, subscribe. You can also check out our other shows on the ACSA Podcast Network, including the Leadership Classroom. There's a new episode that just dropped with the Commissioner of the Mountain West. And of course, the Legislative Lunch Break, which is always a good listen. For everyone here, I'm Iván Carrillo. We'll see you next time.